Hello and welcome to This Is Austin. Do you think that all these massive mergers, acquisitions that have been happening lately over the past couple of years, do you think they are good or are they bad for the consumer?
I think there is one side of me personally which thinks that it is a little ridiculous when you see tens of billions of dollars flowing around, companies absorbing other companies in ways that can make products worse. I think a great point here is Intel, right? For many years, Intel absolutely dominated the space. They were way better than everyone else, including AMD, so they didn't really have to do that much. And now it's a super healthy space entirely because we have now Apple, AMD, and Intel all fighting over the same slice of the pie, essentially. But on the other side, look at something like Instagram, right? Remember when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion? Everyone was like, oh my God, $1 billion.
I remember when that was an unfathomable amount of money that they bought them for.
But I don't think that all mergers, especially these huge billion-dollar mergers, are necessarily a bad thing. But it's such a huge gray area, and it's so like up to interpretation, not only by regulators, but also just by consumers, that like it's hard to just make a big blanket statement like merger good, bad company bad.
I am personally very much in favor of the Microsoft Activision acquisition. But like the Facebook one, I'm against. It's not just big companies that are, oh, this company's getting too big. It's this company's getting too big in this particular space. So like on Facebook with Instagram, I think they have access to just too much of, again, our personal data.
Yeah.
And I'm against that.
So man, look, it's one thing to block a merger that is potentially going to happen. I think it's a very different thing when you come in and you start busting companies up, right?
Yeah, that's true.
There's certainly precedent for huge companies like Standard Oil and whatnot to be broken up for the good of consumers. I don't think Facebook is wildly outside of that kind of conversation, but also it's a very nuanced kind of thing. I think the barrier for breaking up a company needs to be miles higher than to block a quote-unquote simple sort of acquisition. Like to me, like I just imagine if someone comes in here and goes, Matt, this is too powerful. We need to break it up. We need to break up the overclock empire. You need to only use that when you really need to use that.
Well, first off, we need to use that on Linus Media Group.
But yes, Linus is too powerful.
Linus is too powerful.
Short Circuit needs to be disbanded immediately.
You guys got to go your separate ways. You can only have one channel per province in Canada. That's the way it's going to have to work now. Like I have thoughts on the Microsoft acquisition.
Yeah.
And why I think this is why I think it's good. Is Microsoft getting huge with all these acquisitions? They absolutely are. Yeah. But a couple things to remember: Sony's still bigger than them in the gaming division. Under still Tencent and Sony.
Okay.
So it's not like, there's a lot of talk with Sony when the announcement was made that they lost $20 billion in market cap. That was such a small number to Sony. I know there's no real easy way to say this when you're talking about corporations. Microsoft is one of the only corporations that I trust to be semi-responsible with having that much power, that much control over the industry. And we have a very short sample size of that we've seen with Game Pass.
Well, it's like Netflix, right? Netflix was very affordably priced for a long time, and then now every year or so it goes up $1 or $2, which is fair. Inflation exists.
I do have the Netflix argument that I want to talk about.
Go for it.
The reason I don't think that's the same scenario for Microsoft versus something like Netflix, that is Netflix 100. That's 100% of the revenue. Microsoft, Xbox is still such a tiny fraction of the revenue for Microsoft
like
as a
that.
whole.
I don't think you can just be like, oh, because this is kind of like a hobby for them that they don't have to play by the same rules, because this is a $100 billion hobby.
Right, but they have the ability here because, again, it's such a small fraction of their business that they can be conservative about it, where they say, okay, this $15 is opening up gaming to so many more people. They can say, okay, is the public backlash of saying we're going to jack up the price of Game Pass, is that worth an extra, fraction of a percent against the overall bottom line of Microsoft?
Yeah, so I mean,
I think that Microsoft is smart enough to say, no, it's not, because we've seen this with Windows forever. Windows has dominated the industry.
Absolutely.
And they've been, for the most part, fairly responsible with it. Now, there are some stuff of there's the whole backlash with Windows 11. They've had some missteps, which if there was bigger competitors to OSs, that they would be more in line to check with.
Yeah. When you look at the merger scene, and I do think we have to look outside of Microsoft because there are lots of other mergers between not only Meta and all these.
How much has Tencent bought over the past few years?
Absolutely.
This acquisition is not Microsoft versus Sony. It's Microsoft versus Tencent.
Mm-hmm.
Netflix wants to get into gaming.
Yep.
Google wants to get into gaming.
I mean, gaming is
Amazon
clearly
wants to get into gaming.
a huge part of the future of entertainment, right? I mean, I feel like games for a long time have been seen as kind of like below movies and TV and whatnot, but by revenue, that's really not the case anymore.
No.
And certainly by like amount of hours spent on content.
As these companies, like as Sony gets bigger, as Microsoft gets bigger, as Tencent gets bigger, it's going to make it infinitely harder for something like Amazon to break in. You know, Amazon has Luna.
Sure, consolidation.
You know, they want to break into it, but as they get bigger, what content is going to go on Amazon now? They have to find all these smaller studios. You know, Google tried to break in with Stadia, and I do think that Stadia was a good idea, a good concept, but
Wasn't
they
well
absolutely
executed.
it was executed so horribly because they had no content. But if 3 companies own all the content, how will a new system break in because they have nothing to put on their platform?
Gaming does have a small advantage in that indie titles, I think, have a larger shot of being successful, like commercially. You can think of a small team who can build with like a tool like Unity and make something like Fall Guys or whatever, which is a great game, but it's not a $100 million production budget, at least I certainly hope not. So there always will be a little bit of that. But the thing is, when I think about the landscape of big tech as it is right now, there's so much money floating around. When you see Microsoft spending $70 billion in cash to purchase a competitor. That being said, my opinion is that this needs to be sort of litigated before the fact and not when it comes to actually like breaking companies apart, because that's pretty aggressive. But where do you draw the line?
And that's,
right? Do you blame Microsoft? Do you blame Sony when they try to do the next acquisition? Do you blame Nintendo when they're purchased by Amazon?
You kind of have to blame the lawmakers who have made these super ambiguous.
Well, the legal sort of side of things has changed a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because again, there used to be very strong anti-competitive laws back in the 70s and sort of the early days, and then there was an explosion of growth in the industry because it was so limited for so long. So like, there's been kind of ebbs and flows of how sort of heavy-handed the sort of legal side of things are.
We do have to remember that Microsoft was in the middle of all of that in the 80s.
Well, especially when you consider the anti-competitiveness that they got. Like, remember when they had to ship like the different browsers because of Internet Explorer? And like, Microsoft has like a good guy reputation right now, and I think they've mostly earned that. It wasn't long ago at all.
No, and
they were very much Microsoft, the evil big bad. Like, things have changed a lot, but you know what? They can change just as easily back as soon as a new CEO comes in, new this, new that. Like, I don't think we should be like, well, this company gets a pass because they're good guys.
No, I don't think anyone should get a pass.
Yeah.
Of any company right now, I trust Microsoft the most with this type of power.
As of right now, yes, I agree with that.
You're right. Like, how do we interpret them reshaping Microsoft Gaming, you know, kind of redesigning this whole thing as anything but prepared to have to spin off another subsidiary if they get broken off to antitrust?
Oh, so you think the Microsoft Gaming rebrand is almost like
It's almost like a preemptive. If the acquisition comes through and they say, okay, no, you can't do this under Microsoft, they can easily just break off Microsoft Gaming.
It's not crazy. I don't know if that's really the motivation behind it. But I mean, there's certainly a deep bit of thinking that's going on, I think, in a lot of different companies right now. And I think that the idea of the perception of the sort of the good guy, bad guy companies versus the reality of their actions, right? So you look at the social capital of, if I am, say, Amazon, right? Do you trust Amazon with your data more than Facebook? Or Meta, I guess, or Google, or Apple, or whatever. And it's interesting to see that people's sort of perceptions of things, like Apple's actually rated fairly low. But when you look at the actions, Apple, I think, does more for privacy than pretty much anyone else out
any
there.
other company in the world. It's a weird personal preference thing of, I don't have a reason to trust Amazon any more than I do with like Google or Facebook.
Yeah. I think it's a difference of people trusting with data versus people trusting like the company and the idea. Because there's a very different thing between, hey, I trust Google to know everything about me versus, I trust Google to not leak my photos or something like that and let my email get hacked or something.
No, I have a feeling that we'll end up talking about this several more times over the next couple of years because, again, we're at the start of this massive arms race.
Yes.
Like, I think that $67 billion is just the beginning.
I mean,
it's like, you know, we can argue this. I'm using this more as hyperbole, but I don't think it's crazy to see in the news, you know, in a few months, whatever, that like Tencent buys Nintendo. These are massive ripples in the industry.
Yep.
And other companies are gonna have to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is going to set off, specifically on the gaming side of things, this is going to set off an arms race between companies trying to acquire as many studios as they can. But also, if you zoom out a little bit to just big tech overall, how many times has Google tried to buy, like, didn't they try to buy, like, Twitter? And, like, they've tried to buy so many of these huge companies. Like, I think we're going to be at sort of a crossroads, right? Of either we're going to see a ton more of this and it's going to be a very friendly environment and lots more consolidation is going to happen between tech and gaming, or I think that something is going to come up, probably most likely regulation, which is going to make it a much less friendly environment to go out and be spending your giant piles of cash purchasing every company who could potentially be useful in the future.
Yeah.
But let us know what you think about the idea of big tech and big gaming at the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and give the algorithms all your data and information to let them know that you want more This Is. Otherwise, we'll be purchased by Microsoft.
I'd love that. Purchase me. I am 100% for sale.
Sellout over here.
Yeah.